The night sky over the Canadian wilderness lit up like a fireworks show as something massive tore through the atmosphere. Trees bent and broke as the unknown object crashed deep into the forest, leaving a trail of smoke and twisted metal in its wake. When the dust settled, silence returned to the woods. But not for long. From the wreckage of what looked like no earthly machine, a figure emerged. This was Zixtal, though no human would ever know his real name. Standing 7 feet tall with skin that seemed to shimmer between green and silver. He was nothing like anything Earth had ever seen. His people, the Verthikari, were warriors from a distant planet called Verthik, where survival meant being the strongest and fastest. Zixtal pulled himself from the smoking remains of his ship, his body aching from the impact. Dark blue blood dripped from cuts across his arms and chest. But the physical pain was nothing compared to what was happening inside his body. You see, the Verthikari had a problem that made them different from almost every other species in the galaxy. Their bodies burned through energy like a race car burns through fuel. Back on his home planet, Zixtal had to eat massive amounts of protein every few hours just to stay alive. His people had special food machines that could create the perfect meals for their unique needs. But those machines were now scattered in pieces across the forest floor. Zixtal stumbled through the wreckage, desperately searching for anything that might help him. His emergency food packs were destroyed. The protein bars he carried were burned beyond recognition. Even the backup supplies were useless now. As the hours passed, something terrible began to happen. His stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside. His hands started to shake, and his vision became blurry. This wasn't just hunger. This was his body beginning to shut down on Verthik. Going without food for more than 6 hours meant certain death. His people's bodies were designed for constant fuel, and without it, their organs would simply stop working. Zixtal had now been without proper food for almost 8 hours. He tried to catch some of the small animals that lived in the forest. A few rabbits, some birds, even tried to eat plants and berries. But nothing worked. His body rejected everything. The protein in Earth's creatures was too different, too weak for his alien digestive system. By the time the sun started to set, on his first day, Zixtal was barely able to stand. His warrior training had taught him to fight through pain, but this was something else entirely. His body was literally consuming itself to stay alive. That's when he heard the voices. 3 young people had been hiking through the area when they spotted the smoke from his crash. They thought maybe a small plane had gone down and someone might need help. Their names were Jake, Lisa, and Tom, college students on a weekend camping trip. "Hello, is anyone there?" Jake called out as they approached the crash site. "We saw the smoke. Are you okay?" Zixtal heard them coming long before they saw him. His alien senses were much sharper than human ones, even in his weakened state. He could smell them too, and that's when something horrifying happened. The scent of human flesh triggered something deep in his alien biology. His body recognized that these creatures might contain the proteins he desperately needed. His stomach cramped with such force that he doubled over in pain. "Oh my God, there's someone there," Lisa shouted when she spotted his large figure hunched behind a fallen tree. They rushed toward him, thinking he was just another crash survivor who needed help. They had no idea they were walking toward the most dangerous predator their planet had ever seen. Zixtal tried to fight against what was happening to him. His warrior code taught him to protect innocent life, not harm it, but his body was betraying him. Every instinct screamed that these humans were food, not friends. "Sir, are you hurt?" "We're here to help," Tom said, kneeling down beside the alien. Warrior. When Zixtal looked up at them, the humans gasped. His eyes were unlike anything they'd ever seen, large, dark, and filled with an intelligence that seemed almost otherworldly. But there was something else there too, something that made them take a step back. Hunger. Pure, desperate hunger. "Please," Zixtal managed to say in broken English. His people had studied Earth's languages in case they ever needed to make contact. "I need food." The humans looked at each other, confused. This person was clearly not from around here, but they assumed he was just a foreign traveler who had been in some kind of accident. Of course, Lisa said kindly. We have some energy bars and sandwiches in our packs. Let us help you. But when she reached into her backpack, Zixel's control finally snapped. The scent of human flesh was overwhelming his senses. His alien body was screaming that he was about to die if he didn't eat something with the right proteins immediately. What happened next would haunt Zixel for the rest of his time on Earth. His warrior training took over, but not in the way it was supposed to. Instead of protecting these innocent people, his survival instincts turned them into prey. The feeding was quick but horrifying. Zixel's alien biology processed human protein with an efficiency that shocked even him. Within minutes, his shaking stopped. His vision cleared. His organs began working properly again. But as he sat there in the growing darkness, surrounded by what remained of 3 people who had only wanted to help him, Zixel realized something terrible. The human flesh hadn't just fed him, it had satisfied his hunger in a way that nothing else ever had. His alien body had found the perfect fuel source, and now it would crave nothing else. As he looked up at the stars, knowing his rescue ship was probably light years away, Zixel understood his horrible fate. He was trapped on a planet full of the only food that could keep him alive, and every few hours, his body would demand more. The warrior from Verthik had become something he never thought possible, a monster who would have to choose between his own survival and the lives of innocent people. The hunger was already starting to return. 3 weeks had passed since the crash, and Zixel had learned to survive in ways he never imagined. He had made his home in an old mining building deep in the mountains, far from where most humans would travel. The abandoned structure gave him shelter and a place to hide during the day, but hiding was becoming harder every day. The alien warrior sat on the cold concrete floor, staring at his hands. They looked different now, bigger, stronger. His whole body was changing. The human protein he had been forced to consume was doing something unexpected to his alien biology. He was growing larger, his muscles more defined, his senses sharper than ever before. Back on Verthik, his people ate synthetic proteins made specifically for their bodies. But here on Earth, human flesh was providing nutrients his species had never experienced. His body was adapting, evolving, becoming something new, and the hunger was getting worse. What used to happen every 6 hours now came every 4 hours, then every 3. The cramping pain in his stomach would start as a small ache and grow into something that made him double over in agony. His vision would blur, his hands would shake, and his mind would fill with only one thought: find food. Zixel had tried everything else. He caught deer, bears, even tried eating fish from the nearby lake. His body would reject it all within hours. Only human protein could satisfy what he needed to survive. The worst part was that he was starting to enjoy it. This terrified him more than anything else. His people were warriors, but they were also honorable. They protected the innocent and fought only when necessary. What he was becoming went against everything he had been taught since childhood. Meanwhile, down in the valley, people were starting to notice that something was wrong. Detective Ray Collins had been working missing person cases for 15 years, but he'd never seen anything like this. 7 people had vanished in the past 3 weeks, all in the same general area: hikers, campers, even a park ranger who had gone to investigate the earlier disappearances. This doesn't make sense, Ray muttered to himself as he looked at the map in his office. Red pins marked each location where someone had gone missing. They formed a rough circle around the old mining area in the mountains. His partner, Detective Kelly Wong, leaned over his shoulder. Maybe it's a bear or a pack of wolves. Ray shook his head. The search teams found some remains, but they're not consistent with animal attacks. The bite marks don't match anything we know about. What Ray didn't tell his partner was that the forensics team had found something else at the crime scenes. Strange chemical residues that didn't match anything in their databases, and what looked like burn marks from some kind of advanced technology. The FBI had been called in, along with a team of specialists who seemed to know more than they were willing to share. Ray got the feeling they were dealing with something much bigger than a simple serial case. Back in the mountains, Zixel was struggling with more than just his growing hunger. Something else was happening to him, something that made his situation even more horrifying. Every time he fed, he experienced flashes of memory that weren't his own. Brief glimpses of human lives, birthday parties, family dinners, first dates, graduations. The memories of his victims were somehow becoming part of him. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but the memories were detailed, too. Real. He could remember a woman named Carol teaching her daughter to ride a bike. He could recall a man named Pete's wedding day, the joy on his face as he danced with his new wife. These weren't his memories, but they felt real enough to make him cry. The scientist in him understood what was happening. Human brain tissue contained unique proteins that his alien biology was processing in unexpected ways. He was literally absorbing parts of their consciousness along with the nutrients he needed. This made every feeding a double torture. Not only did he have to take a life to survive, but he also had to live with the memories of the person he had consumed. Their hopes, dreams, fears, and love for their families became part of his own consciousness. But the hunger was stronger than his guilt. Zixel had become a perfect predator. His enhanced senses could track humans from miles away. He could hear their heartbeats, smell their fear, predict their movements. The alien technology from his ship, what little still worked, helped him set traps and avoid detection. He learned to study human behavior, to understand their patterns. He knew which trails were most isolated, what times of day offered the best opportunities, how to make his attacks look like accidents. The warrior part of his mind hated what he was becoming, but the growing animal part of his brain was getting better at justifying his actions. These humans were invading his territory, he told himself. He was just defending his home. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was becoming addicted to human flesh in a way that went beyond simple nutrition. His body craved it, needed it, demanded it more frequently with each passing day. And the changes weren't just physical. His personality was shifting too. The honorable warrior who had crashed on Earth 3 weeks ago was being replaced by something darker, more primal. The human memories mixing with his own were creating a confused, unstable mind that struggled to tell right from wrong. One evening, as he sat in his abandoned mine, Zixel tried to remember what his home planet looked like, but the memory was fuzzy, mixed up with images of human places he'd never actually been to. A small town main street, a suburban kitchen, a child's bedroom. He was losing himself piece by piece, becoming something that was neither fully alien nor human, a creature, caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. The hunger pains were starting again, earlier than yesterday. His body was demanding more food, more frequently. At this rate, he would need to feed every few hours just to function, and somewhere in the valley below, Detective Collins was getting closer to finding him. Zixel stood up, his enhanced muscles rippling under his changing skin. The hunt would begin again soon. The hunger always won in the end. But for just a moment, he allowed himself to remember Pete's wedding day, and he wondered if there was any way back from what he was becoming. 2 months had passed since the crash, and Zixel was no longer the same being who had fallen from the stars. His body had grown even larger, now standing nearly 8 feet tall with muscles that seemed carved from stone. His skin had darkened to a deep metallic green, and his eyes glowed with an inner light that would terrify any human who saw them. But the most frightening change was in his mind. The alien warrior could barely remember his home planet anymore. The memories of 12 humans now lived inside his head, mixing with his own thoughts like colors bleeding together on wet paper. Sometimes he would catch himself humming a song that belonged to a young woman named Beth. Other times he would crave coffee, even though his alien body couldn't process it. The hunger now came every 2 hours without fail. His body had become so dependent on human protein that even a short delay would send him into violent spasms. He was no longer just surviving. He was addicted, and he was getting very, very good at hunting. Zixel had learned to move through the forest like a shadow. His enhanced senses could track a human from 3 miles away. He could hear their conversations, smell their fear, Feel the vibrations of their footsteps through the ground. The few pieces of alien technology that still worked from his ship had been turned into hunting tools. He had created a perfect system. First, he would study his targets from a distance, learning their routines and habits. Then he would set traps using his superior technology, energy barriers. That looked like fallen trees, sound generators that mimicked animal calls to lead people off the main trails. The worst part was how smart he had become at covering his tracks. He would scatter remains to look like animal attacks. He would create false evidence pointing toward bear caves or wolf dens. He even learned to mimic the bite patterns of Earth's predators. But down in the valley, the humans were getting smarter too. Detective Ray Collins stared at the evidence board in the temporary command center they had set up. In the small mountain town, 15 missing persons in 2 months. The FBI had taken over the case, and they had brought in people Ray had never seen before. Dr. Amanda Chen was a specialist in something called cryptozoology, the study of unknown creatures. She had been examining the strange evidence found at the crime scenes with an intensity that made Ray uncomfortable. These aren't animal attacks, she said for the 10th time that morning, pointing to photographs of the strange burn marks they kept finding. This technology is beyond anything we have on Earth. Agent David Kim from the FBI looked skeptical. You're suggesting what exactly? That we're dealing with aliens? Dr. Chen nodded grimly. The chemical residues, the precise nature of the consumption, the way the attacks are escalating in frequency and sophistication. Whatever we're hunting, it's not from around here. Ray wanted to dismiss her theories as science fiction, but he couldn't argue with the evidence. The attack patterns were too intelligent, too planned. And there were the bite marks that didn't match any known predator on Earth. There's something else, Dr. Chen continued. I've been analyzing the progression of attacks. The creature is learning, adapting. Its hunting methods are becoming more sophisticated with each incident. She was right, though none of them realized just how right. She was high in the mountains. Zixel was experiencing something that terrified him even more than his growing hunger. The memories of his victims were becoming so vivid that he could barely tell which thoughts were his own anymore. He would find himself crying over the death of a pet dog he had never owned, remembering the taste of birthday cake he had never eaten. The personality of a school teacher named Robert was so strong in his mind that sometimes Zixel would catch himself thinking about lesson plans and parent meetings. The alien warrior tried to fight against this mental invasion, but it was getting worse with each feeding. He was becoming a living collection of human consciousness, their hopes and fears and dreams all jumbled together in his alien mind. And the hunger was driving him to take bigger risks. 3 days ago, he had attacked during daylight hours for the first time. A park ranger named Tony had been checking on some missing hikers when Zixel struck. The feeding had been rushed, desperate, and he had barely managed to hide the evidence before other rangers arrived. Yesterday, he had made an even bolder move. A group of 4 hunters had been camping near his territory. His hunger had been so intense that he couldn't wait for them to separate. He had used his alien technology to create a diversion, then picked them off one by one. But he had made a mistake. One of the hunters, a man named Luke, had managed to fire his rifle before Zixel could reach him. The bullet had missed, but the sound had attracted attention. More importantly, Luke had seen him clearly in the firelight for the first time since the crash. A human had gotten a good look at what was hunting them. The description Luke gave to the authorities before he disappeared was terrifying and impossible to ignore. An 8-foot-tall humanoid creature with glowing eyes, metallic skin, and technology that seemed to bend light around it. Dr. Chen had interviewed Luke's hunting partner, who had managed to escape but was now in shock at the local hospital. The man kept repeating the same words over and over. It wasn't human. It wasn't human. Now the search teams were different. They carried heavier weapons, moved in larger groups, and used equipment that Ray had never seen before. Whatever organization Dr. Chen and Agent Kim worked for, they had been preparing for something like this, but Zixel was preparing too. The alien warrior stood at the edge of his territory, watching the humans set up their search patterns through the scope of a device he had built from his ship's remains. They were getting closer, and he knew it was only a matter of time before they found his hiding place. The smart thing would be to run, to find a new territory farther from human civilization. But the hunger wouldn't let him travel far. He needed to feed every 2 hours now, and humans were the only source of the protein his body craved. More importantly, this was his territory now. The memories of his victims had given him a strange attachment to this place through their eyes. He had seen the beauty of these mountains, felt their love for the wilderness, part of him. The part that was becoming more human with each feeding, wanted to protect this place from the invaders. He was no longer just an alien trying to survive. He was becoming something else entirely, a creature that belonged neither to his homeworld, nor to Earth, but to something in between. The hunt was about to become much more dangerous for everyone involved. As Zixel watched them, search teams spread out below, he felt the familiar cramping in his stomach. The hunger was returning, stronger than ever, and this time he wouldn't have to go looking for prey. They were coming to him. The truth was finally out, and it was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Dr. Amanda Chen stood in the command center, surrounded by evidence that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Fragments of alien technology, chemical analyses that defied known science, and testimonies from survivors that all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. "We're not dealing with a serial killer or a wild animal," she announced to the assembled team. "We're dealing with an extraterrestrial being that crashed somewhere in these mountains." 2 months ago, the room fell silent. Even Agent Kim, who had seen classified files most people couldn't imagine, looked shaken by the certainty in her voice. "The technology fragments we found are made from materials that don't exist on Earth," Dr. Chen continued. "The bite patterns and consumption methods suggest a being with a completely different biology from anything we know, and the escalating pattern of attacks indicates high intelligence and rapid adaptation." Detective Ray Collins shook his head. "You're asking us to believe in aliens now?" "I'm asking you to look at the evidence," Dr. Chen replied firmly. "This creature has consumed at least 20 people in 2 months. Its feeding frequency is increasing, and its methods are becoming more sophisticated. We need to find it before it becomes even more dangerous." What Dr. Chen didn't tell them was that her organization had been preparing for this possibility for years. They had protocols, specialized equipment, and weapons designed specifically for non-human threats. The question was whether they would be enough. High in the mountains, Zixel was facing his own crisis. The alien warrior sat in his makeshift shelter, clutching his head as another wave of conflicting memories washed over him. The consciousness of 20 humans now lived inside his mind, their voices becoming louder and more demanding with each passing hour. He could hear them talking to each other, arguing, pleading. Some begged him to stop the killing, others shared their knowledge, trying to help him understand human behavior. A few were angry, demanding revenge for their deaths. The worst part was that he was starting to agree with them. "This has to end," he whispered to himself, using the voice of a teacher named Patricia who had become one of his strongest mental presences. "You're not a monster, you're a warrior. Warriors protect people." But then his alien instincts would surge back, reminding him that he needed to feed every 90 minutes now. His body was changing at an accelerated rate, requiring more and more human protein to maintain his enhanced abilities. Desperate to find another solution, Zixel had spent the last 3 days working frantically to repair his ship's food synthesizers. Using parts salvaged from the crash and his knowledge of Verthakari technology, he had managed to create a crude but functioning protein generator. The machine hummed to life, producing a thick, blue substance that looked nothing like the food he remembered from home. Zixel consumed it eagerly, hoping beyond hope that this would end his dependence on human flesh. For 2 hours, it worked. The cramping in his stomach subsided, and his mind felt clearer than it had in weeks. But then the hunger returned, stronger than ever. The synthetic protein had only delayed the inevitable. His body rejected everything except human flesh now. He had become so adapted to that specific protein source that nothing else could sustain him. The synthesizer could only reduce his cravings temporarily, not eliminate them. In his desperation, Zixel made a decision that would change everything. He would hunt during the day, taking bigger risks to satisfy his growing hunger. The human search teams were getting closer, but he couldn't wait for nightfall anymore. That afternoon, he struck at a research station near the base of the mountain. 6 scientists studying local wildlife became his targets. But this time, something went wrong. Dr. Lisa Park, a biologist studying bird migration patterns, saw him coming. Her training kicked in, and instead of running, she grabbed her emergency radio and began broadcasting a description of what she was seeing. This is Dr. Park at Research Station Alpha. I'm looking at a humanoid creature approximately 8 feet tall, metallic green skin, glowing eyes. It's moving with incredible speed and appears to be using some kind of advanced technology. This is not a hoax. I repeat, this is not a hoax. The message reached the command center just as Zixel realized his mistake. The scientist was still broadcasting when he reached her, and her final words were heard by everyone on the search team. It's intelligent. It's looking right at me. It knows I'm reporting this. Oh God, it's trying to communicate. The transmission cut off, but the damage was done. For the first time, the search teams had real-time intelligence about their target within hours. They had tracked Zixel to his general location. Military helicopters circled overhead while specialized ground teams moved through the forest with weapons and equipment unlike anything Ray Collins had ever seen. The alien warrior knew he was surrounded, but the hunger was driving him to desperation. He needed to feed, and the humans hunting him were the only source of the protein his body craved. As darkness fell, the confrontation began. Zixel used his superior technology to create illusions and false sounds, trying to confuse the search teams. His enhanced senses allowed him to move through the forest like a ghost, staying just ahead of his pursuers. But the humans were smarter than he had expected. They had learned from their earlier encounters, using tactics and equipment specifically designed to counter his advantages. The first direct contact came when Zixel encountered a 3-person team near a mountain stream. Agent Kim was leading the group, armed with some kind of energy weapon that looked almost alien itself. Stay back, Kim shouted when he saw the creature emerge from the tree line. We know what you are. We can help you. But Zixel was beyond reasoning. The hunger was too strong, the voices in his head too loud. He attacked with the desperate fury of a cornered animal, his alien technology clashing with human weapons in a battle that lit up the night forest. The fight was brutal and chaotic. Zixel's strength and speed gave him an advantage, but the humans had numbers and better equipment. Energy blasts scorched trees while alien devices created shields of light and sound. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the human team members were down, and Agent Kim was badly wounded. But Zixel hadn't escaped unharmed for the first time since the crash. He had been truly hurt by human weapons. As he retreated deeper into the mountains, leaving a trail of his own strange blood, Zixel realized that everything had changed. The humans now knew exactly what they were dealing with, and they had weapons that could actually harm him. More importantly, the voices in his head were getting louder. The consciousness of his victims was becoming stronger, more unified. They were no longer just passive memories. They were actively fighting against his actions. The alien warrior found himself caught between 3 different battles: the physical confrontation with the human search teams, the biological war between his alien body and his failing synthesizer, and the psychological struggle between his own consciousness and the 20 human minds now living inside his head. And somewhere in the distance, he could hear more helicopters approaching. The final confrontation was coming, and Zixel was no longer sure which side of himself would win. Zixel crawled back to his crashed ship, his alien blood leaving a strange, glowing trail behind him. The human weapons had hurt him in ways he didn't think possible, but the physical pain was nothing compared to what was happening inside his mind. The voices were screaming now. 20 human consciousness lived inside his head, and they were no longer just passive memories. They had found a way to work together, to fight back against the alien mind that had consumed them. Their combined willpower was like a storm raging through his thoughts, Stop this madness, shouted the voice of Dr. Patricia, the teacher who had become the strongest presence in his mind. You're not a monster. Remember who you were. Please, whispered Beth, the young woman whose memories of music still played in his head. My family is still looking for me. Don't let my death be meaningless. But Robert, the park ranger, was angrier. You took everything from us, our lives, our futures, our families. How can you live with yourself? Zixel pressed his hands against his head, trying to block out their voices. But they were part of him now, woven into his consciousness in ways he couldn't escape. The hunger was getting worse too. He now needed to feed every hour, and the pain between meals was becoming unbearable. His enhanced body was consuming itself at an alarming rate, requiring constant fuel just to function. In desperation, he activated what remained of his ship's communication system. He had been trying to contact his people for weeks, but the damage to his beacon had made it impossible. Now, using every bit of power he had left, he managed to send out a weak distress signal. To his amazement, he got an answer. The voice that came through the static was Captain X, commander of a Verthikari patrol ship that was passing through this solar system. Zixel had served under him years ago, before this mission to scout Earth. Warrior Zixel, we have received your signal. Report your status. Captain, Zixel replied weakly. I am stranded on the third planet. My ship is destroyed. I need immediate rescue. There was a long pause before Dex responded. Negative, Warrior. Our sensors show human military activity in your area. We cannot risk exposing our species to discovery. You are ordered to destroy all evidence of your presence and terminate your mission. Zixel's heart sank. Sir, I need medical assistance. My biology has been compromised by local proteins. I cannot survive without regular feeding. Then you know what you must do, Dex said coldly. Activate your ship's self-destruct sequence. Die with honor, as a warrior should. The communication ended, leaving Zixel alone with the terrible truth. His own people had abandoned him. They valued their secrecy more than his life. As he sat in the wreckage of his ship, the voices in his head grew louder. But now they weren't just angry or pleading. They were showing him something he had tried to forget. Through their memories, he experienced love in ways his warrior culture had never taught him. He felt a mother's joy watching her child take first steps. He experienced the warmth of friendship, the comfort of family gatherings, the simple pleasure of watching a sunset with someone you cared about. These weren't just the people he had consumed. They were individuals with hopes, dreams, and people who loved them. Each one had left behind families who were still searching, still hoping, still grieving. Look what you've taken from the world, Patricia's voice said gently. But look what you could still give back. Zixel didn't understand what she meant until he heard the helicopters approaching again. The human search teams had tracked his blood trail and were closing in fast. Dr. Amanda Chen's voice came through a megaphone as the aircraft circled overhead. We know you're in there. We want to talk. We can help you. For the first time since the crash, Zixel considered the possibility that the humans might actually want to help rather than simply destroy him. But how could they help someone who had consumed 20 of their own kind? The answer came from an unexpected source. Agent Kim, wounded but still determined, had convinced Dr. Chen to try a different approach. Instead of attacking, they would attempt communication. We know you're intelligent, Dr. Chen's voice continued. We know you're suffering. Your feeding pattern shows you're not choosing this. Something about our planet has changed your biology. Zixel was amazed. The humans had figured out more about his condition than he had expected. Through their scientific methods, they had understood that he wasn't simply a predator, but a victim of circumstances beyond his control. But understanding didn't change the facts. He was still addicted to human flesh, still required feeding every hour, still had 20 voices screaming in his head. The hunger pains started again, right on schedule. His vision blurred, his hands shook, and every instinct told him to hunt the humans who were so conveniently gathered outside his ship. That's when the voices made their final stand. Nitrogen monoxide. They shouted in unison, we won't let you hurt anyone else. For the first time since the crash, the human consciousness inside his mind took control. Patricia's teaching experience, Robert's knowledge of the wilderness, Dr. Lisa's scientific training, and all the others worked together to hold back his alien instincts. It was the most painful thing Zixtal had ever experienced. His body was literally fighting against his mind, alien biology warring with human will. But somehow, the combined strength of 20 human souls was enough to keep him from attacking. "Help us help you," Dr. Chen called out again. "Come out slowly. We have medical equipment that might be able to ease your suffering." Zixtal looked at his ship's self-destruct controls. One touch would end everything: his pain, his hunger, his guilt. It would also ensure that no other humans would die because of him. But the voices had one more thing to show him. Through their memories, he saw something beautiful. He saw the human capacity for forgiveness, for healing, for turning even the worst tragedies into something meaningful. Families who had lost loved ones but still found ways to help others. People who had been hurt but chose to show kindness instead of revenge. "You could help them understand," Buth's voice whispered. "Your knowledge, your experience, it could help humanity prepare for when others like you arrive. Not all of them will crash. Not all of them will be alone and desperate." Zixtal realized she was right. His people would eventually return to Earth, whether for exploration, colonization, or conquest. The humans needed to know what was coming. They needed to understand alien biology, technology, and psychology. He could be the bridge between two worlds. Slowly, painfully, Zixtal stood up. The hunger was tearing him apart, but the voices gave him strength. 20 human souls, working together to help him make the right choice. He walked to the entrance of his ship and stepped outside. Dr. Chen and her team were waiting, weapons lowered but ready, when they saw him clearly for the first time. 8 feet tall, glowing eyes, skin like liquid metal. Several of them stepped back in fear. But Dr. Chen held her ground. "I am Zixtal of Verthuk," he said in English that was much clearer than when he had first crashed. "I am dying, and I need your help. But more importantly, you need mine." He collapsed then, the hunger and the internal battle finally overwhelming him. But as consciousness faded, he heard Dr. Chen giving orders for medical transport, not execution. The last thing he heard was Patricia's voice in his mind. "You chose correctly, warrior. Now let us help you live with honor." For the first time in months, Zixtal felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The alien warrior's story was far from over. But perhaps, with human help and the strength of 20 souls guiding him, he could find a way to make peace with what he had become.